I was never comfortable. I dodged that bullet for 2 years, 3 years, and Ryan Coogler was very persistent, kept pushing it, and we had the same agent. But I didn't want to do it because the way he had written it, Rocky dies. Demolition Man.
MTL complete.
I think it was a great movie. It's one of the few films that really hangs up, and it's almost it's close to happening. You know, there's certain kind of mannerisms, and we call it the gentilization of society. Everything's so meek, and then a couple of guys. One guy gets out, they have to bring a guy who is from the violent I don't even know what it would be, like 1990. That's how far back. And I thought it was just very, very contemporary. I just ran into the director of that in New York, maybe 3 weeks ago, Marco Brambilla. I thought it was really well done. Wesley was wild. He's a wild man, very energetic, good fighter. When we were doing kicks, I had to wear something like a plate here so he could really lay into me and I could feel it. And it was good, but Wesley, he really dug down there and gave a very memorable character. He did things with his hair and his voice, and he was good. He was at the top of his game then. I thought this set design was brilliant. It was what we call a practical set. Those things really worked. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I thought those are the two most dangerous stunts I've ever done, is one with a giant claw. Because sometimes the hydraulics would go sideways, and the strength of those metal claws would tear you up. And the other thing is, when they froze me originally and they put me in this round tub, thick plexiglass, you couldn't break it with a sledgehammer, and they started pouring in warm oil, and it's filling up to here. And right here is supposed to cut. If it goes on 30 seconds, it's gonna go to here, and you can't get out, because the lid was bolted on. And I had a couple of fellas there sitting there with sledgehammers and hatchets. And I go, now that the scene was over, why don't you try to open it? And of course, they hit it 20 times, couldn't crack it. So that was crazy. Rocky franchise.
We have a split decision. For free. Those fans out there deserve a rematch in your face.
Why Philadelphia?
Well, I lived in Philadelphia when my parents got divorced, and I quit school at 15, and I actually worked along the docks driving a forklift for my stepfather's company, and I got to know that world very well. So for 1 year, I was this dropout working along the docks, and I'd never thought about ever writing anything. I wasn't a very good student, but when the time came to write Rocky, I said, Philadelphia, you don't really know New York anymore, and it's a real tough city, and all the athletic people there are tough, and they've always been the poor nephew of New York kind of a thing. And so Philly always has a chip on its shoulder. I thought. Then I started doing some research about the Philadelphia fighter. It's a different breed. Bernard Hopkins and Joe Frazier, they're just tough. I was pretty much at the end of my rope. I had written a couple of screenplays, and one was pretty good called Paradise Alley, but I was so broke, I sold the rights for $100. And these producers, I finally got a meeting with them called Shardoff and Winkler, said, we'd like to do this Paradise Alley, but you sold it to a couple of amateurs, so that ship sailed. And I went home. He said, you blew your chance. That was it. That was your moment. And I said, you got to do something. And I started walking around at night. It's like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I'm walking around a place called Balboa Park in the valley. Balboa. Interesting. Then I thought, maybe, but I like mean streets. Why don't you do kind of a mean streets thing? So I wrote a story about this collector and everything else, and Adrian. And then my wife at the time said, I don't like it. I think Rocky's mean. I went, really? I was trying to make him this misunderstood guy. That triggered me realizing I had to surround myself with other positive characters. Apollo Creed, Mickey, Paulie, all these all these individual people that would give the movie some scope. So I went back, started writing like a madman. About 24 hours, I had that pretty much down, and the rest is history.
The reigning heavyweight champion of the world, Rocky Balboa.
I thought of 3. When you think you've actually accomplished something and you realize you've been carried and protected and insulated, and that's happened to so many people in their own lives, like their parents love them so much, they don't let them go out in the real world, and then when they do, they get demolished. And it's happened a lot to fighters where you take easy fights, easy fights, easy fights. Time comes along where a killer shows up, boom, you know. We just saw that recently, you know what I mean? So I thought when Rocky's on the beach, the scene with Adrian, maybe the best scene up to that time in all the Rockies where I'm afraid, I don't want to lose what I got, And that was, as you say, impactful.
We got cars, we got money, we got everything but the truth.
I'm afraid, all right? You want to hear me say it? You want to break me down? All right, I'm afraid.
I envisioned, like I always fantasized about being a boxer because I always had this, maybe not an inferiority complex, but a hero complex. You always wanted to come to rescue or something, but I never really learned it. But the training that I went through on this just changed me as my life as a man. I felt as though you are really going into a world that you don't know. But every fight film I had seen, they always seemed to miss the mark. They didn't spend enough time really learning the craft. It takes a long time. So by having a miracle man like Carl Weathers come along, it was just like 2 perfect dance partners. I was flat-footed and crude, he's on his toes. And even though he had never boxed, he was that good of an athlete that he could have been a boxer. And that changed it all. If it had been anyone other than him, because he was magical. He should have been nominated, this especially in the second, third one. So that was transformative, it really was. Writing the script, since I never really trained, I went, we need to have something in here. And there hadn't even been a song written. And I said to John, the director, I go, everywhere we go, that's cinematic, like along the railroad tracks or on a bridge, let me look like I'm training here. In other words, we don't have a plan to cut a montage, but if we had all these little pieces, you could put something together. And like, I never did a one-arm push-up in my life, ever. I don't think I've done it since, because it's really bad for the rotator cuffs. Just at one time, I said, all right, let me try it. And you become so invigorated when that camera's on, trying to do something unique and special, getting hit in the stomach with a medicine ball. But that's where it all came around. Then there was a song called Grounds for Separation, written by Hall and Oates. And it was dun, 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 dun. I went, ooh. So we did that, and then Bill Conti, who was brilliant, came along and then refined it all and turned it into Gonna Fly Now.
How about a statement, Rocky?
Actually, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words.
Rocky, get back here!
Rocky, do you think you had it won?
Come on, give him a Rocky over here. Rocky, a statement.
Does my nose look as bad as Mickey's?
Ain't that horrible. Now give him a break.
I like 2 a lot, because 2 was an actual continuation of 1. I knew we couldn't make a 5-hour movie, a 4.5-hour movie, but it literally, there is no time lapse. It's right as soon as he comes out of the ring. And I thought that was just as good as Rocky 1, but in Rocky 1, you had the element of surprise. The other 2, Mr. T, that was a very vindictive fight and also an experiment. I didn't want to go 15 rounds. I figured the audience had seen it twice. So you had to put in, or I had to put in this time code, let's call it like that. You have 3 rounds, and after that, you're a dead man. You cannot fight at that speed. You are not Apollo Creed. And that kind of energy against Mr. T is going to burn you out quicker. So you have to win. I'm telling you, nobody wants to do this. The studio goes, absolutely not. Because if you fail, you're stuck. That's your big finale, but it worked. And it had to be done mathematically. I took as many punches that would be in a 15-round Rocky fight and condensed all that punching into 3 rounds, so it was so manic, and it worked. Creed.
How do you know all this?
How do you think? He's my father.
I was never comfortable. I dodged that bullet for 2 years, 3 years, and Ryan Coogler was very persistent, kept pushing it, and we had the same agent. But I didn't want to do it because the way he had written it, Rocky dies. He gets Lou Gehrig's disease, and I said, I have a big thing about characters like that dying. I'd much rather them get on a train going somewhere you never see him again, but to die, it will just bum the audience out completely. So once we got over that, I said, okay, we'll give it a shot. And it was a lot of dramatic acting in that because I couldn't use my body. I'm not fighting. So that was a good challenge, and it turned out pretty well.
We usually did that with one hand. I don't want to say anything, though.
What about working with Michael B. Jordan, especially in the first one? What was your guys' dynamic like?
Well, it was good because he had a very good movement like an athlete, and his body developed quickly. And the thing is, he was very optimistic and outgoing. He enjoyed the whole process. I remember we did a scene when Rocky's training with him. I'm holding the pads, and all of a sudden, I start to dry heave and break down, and I realize I have something terribly wrong with me, and I'm going, I'm sorry. It triggered him, and he had 5 minutes of uncontrollable crying. Just the camera wasn't even rolling. So it had touched into something in his own past that was very, very profound. And then we just sat there like two people bawling. But it's not even in the movie. It's just, we literally for 4 or 5 minutes, and we had to cut. That was the end of the day. It was over. We couldn't go back to it anymore. Now, I don't know what caused that, and I still don't to this day, but we both had breakdowns. We were so psychologically invested. Obviously, we come from different walks in life, but that's where we both said, all right, we've had a tough upbringing and parental issues, how he dealt with his parents, how I dealt with mine. So I was the Rocky figure. It looked like I'm dying, and I think he kind of projected maybe that happening to his family, and it affected him profoundly.
It's your time.
I think it gets to the point where you become an unnecessary flashback. In the end of 2, I said, you don't need me anymore, you're on your own. And that was passing the mantle because it's the same reason that, I couldn't go back to Adrian all the time because it was pretty much the same dialogue. Don't fight, you're gonna get hurt, don't fight. So when she was removed, now the story went in a whole different direction. And I guess Creed 3 did the same thing. Rambo.
Drive. Don't look at me, look at the road.
I was the 11th choice. The original script is Rambo was a homicidal maniac with PTSD. He's killed children, he killed fishermen, he was unmanageable, and then eventually had to be put to death by Troutman. I go, this is not a very uplifting movie. And I think they eventually remade it with a name change called The Hunted, I think, with Tommy Lee Jones and Benicio del Toro. And that was more like the real Rambo, and they had to kill each other. It's like pretty bad outcome on that. So I said, why don't we give hope? He tries to avoid fighting. He just wants to go away. Let him go. And this sheriff, his ego was such that I'm not gonna let this nobody get away. So it was all about this manifestation of false pride on the sheriff's part. And they cut one thing out of the screenplay I thought was a big mistake. The reason he hated Rambo so much because he had fought in the Korean War. And no one even thinks of the 35,000 people that died in the Korean War, almost as much as Vietnam. And Vietnam was getting all this sympathy. But it wasn't. It was getting a lot of wrath and ridicule. So both of them had these complexes, but the sheriff was going to fight his own war, the Korean War against Rambo. So it was a personal, weird vendetta. I wish they had kept that in. It was kind of interesting.
And the box is wired, and he opened up the box, fucking blew his body all over the place. And he's laying there, and he's fucking screaming, there's pieces of him all over me, just like this, and I'm trying to pull him off, you know, and it's my friend that's all over me.
Once I got to do the rewrite, and he has a speech at the very end, and I did a lot of research in that. It's almost a fellow who has been autistic, and it's pouring out, it's disjointed, it's a manifestation of his complete breakdown and loss. And I thought, that's pretty good. Also, inadvertently, I've considered it like the best action film I've ever done. And I think it might be one of the first, when you say pure action films. You've had car chases, you've had gunfights, but I mean, it's all action. Where you're speaking with your body, your looks, your intentions, and the other characters are doing the dialogue. You are in action the whole time. I was trying to keep anything to keep warm. I don't care if it's a headband. I was running through the woods, and I saw this abandoned dump truck. I mean, how did it even get there? Among all these giant pines. And underneath was this rotten piece of brown canvas. And I thought, I'm freezing. Maybe I can work this into the screenplay. Sure enough, I ripped this thing and I started cutting it up, and then we lined it because the water was pouring through. It was freezing cold up there. And that's one of those lucky things. Rambo 3 there's absolutely no special effects in it. It's all no CGI. I mean, it was very, very dangerous, very boiling hot. And it was really well made, except from the time we were editing to the time it came out, Russia, who had been in a Cold War with us for about 40 years, decided to come over and shake hands and kiss and make up. And now everyone goes, what is Stallone trying to do? Start another war with Russia? And I mean, I would come into press conferences and people would boo. Like, well, what are you trying to do? I go, have you ever heard of the Cold War? What am I trying to do? So you got to be careful if you're dealing with topical subjects. The Expendables.
I'll take the 4 on the left.
Why don't you take the 2 on the right and leave the rest alone?
I killed them all! I don't care!
You should take the 2 on the right. You're not that fast anymore.
The only thing faster is light.
What it was is I took my wife to an oldies concert, 10 groups, and I go, God, when I was young, they were all great. I said, my wife, you're gonna love this. This is sensational. She said, okay. So we go to I think it's the Hollywood Bowl, and the first guy comes on, the Righteous Brothers, except there's only one of them. The other one passed away, so it's the Righteous guy. And then it's the Young Rascals. There was 4 guys, now it's 1 guy, and he's an old rascal. And he's like, hiding behind everything. It was a nightmare. And finally, blood, sweat, and tears. Oh, honey. I literally, when I was backpacking across Europe, I carried their album in my backpack. That's how much I loved. This guy was a killer. David Clayton Thomas. He used to dress in leather and come out. Now, blood, sweat, and tears, they all come out, and he's dressed in corduroy with like a flannel shirt tucked into his buckle, and his belt is way up here. And he goes, you made me so. You guessed it, very happy. And I went, oh my God. She's looking at me. He goes, you're taking years off my life. Let's get out of here. And I went, years later, I thought of all these action guys that pretty much run the course, pretty much me too. But if you bring them back for an oldies concert, people will come. Individually, nobody's gonna come. So I thought, okay, let me get Dolph and Thing, and Jason Statham, all these people, Jet Li. That's an event, just like the oldies concert. See how it worked out? And that's what did it. It was the curiosity factor.
Trench?
Oh, this is embarrassing.
Yeah, sure is.
Working with Schwarzenegger, what was that dynamic like with the 2 of you?
Very competitive, I'll say that. We've been competitive since we first laid eyes on each other, and not always in the healthiest way. But we finally came to terms when he was running with governor and everything was nice. And it actually became, great frenemies. And to this day, that has been, it's been quite striking because, phone would pick up, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And I went, not much, man. Let's talk about it. Copland.
And that's the best thing I ever did with my life.
So you want to sit around your whole life wishing you were on the force?
Let him spill.
I wouldn't know where to begin.
At that time, I was mainly relegated to a fellow who just did action film and relied upon his muscle and being in shape. And I said, I know there's a lot more in there. So when the script came along with James Mangold, I had to actually divest everything that I had, which I was using as making a living, which is being in shape, to be like completely out of shape, and half hearing is gone. So it kind of put me in this kind of really vulnerable place. So that's why I did it for this big challenge.
Maybe we should go up there.
Gained like about 30, 35 pounds, but it wasn't muscular weight, it was just pancake weight. It was fun doing it, I'll say that. There were two scenes that were really important. One is where I always wanted to date this girl, and she was not attracted to me or anything else. And there's a scene in there where, why didn't you ever get married? And I go, because all the good girls were taken, meaning her. And then a Bruce Springsteen song comes on and all of that. But it's something I've been looking forward to. It was one of the main reasons I wanted to show to myself, we all know what we're pretty much capable of or not capable of. And I had read so many times about the kind of roles I did were superficial and took nothing to it. I said, well, there is a lot more to it, but I'll go back and do a drama with you, because Rocky really was a drama. It was only 6 minutes of fighting. The rest of it was talking and acting. So I just wanted to go toe-to-toe with De Niro and Keitel and Ray Liotta. It worked out real fun. It was good.
Excuse me.
Mo, I apologize.
I'm sorry for rushing in like this, but you were right. They tried to kill him like you said, but he got away. Now he's running through the woods. He's like a scared animal.
The first scene, it was supposed to be, it was coming out of subways, walking through doorways. In other words, the day to acclimate yourself, to get over your opening jitters, let's say, call it that. So I thought I was going to do that. And then, no, you're doing the 8-page scene with De Niro. I said, excuse me? I haven't prepared for this. So we did the 8 pages, and then De Niro wasn't giving me his best. I could feel it, just wasn't. I kept ad-libbing and irritating him until finally he gave me something. He gave me De Niro.
I offered you a chance when we could have done something. I offered you a chance to be a cop, and you blew it! You blew it.
And I thought that was kind of funny. And it proved the point that you just don't give up on a scene, a serious scene, because the other actor is just not quite in sync with you. You keep working it. Cobra.
Court is civilized, isn't it?
But I'm not. This is where the law stops, and I start.
Cobra was triggered by a squad of policemen in the 40s and 50s here called the Hats or something like that. And they would go out and take care of business on their own. You're the disease, I'm the cure kind of mentality. And I thought, why don't I create this character? And he's head of a group called the Zombie Squad. Even though you never see them, I work for the Zombie Squad. And so we did this kind of, it was almost, if you look at it today, this gothic comic kind of thing, whereas the bad guy with a knife with spikes going around the middle of the night is way over the top, but I wanted to do something like that. And pulling up in a Mercury, and I come out wearing motorcycle boots, and they said, well, how can you put a title over this that describes it in a few words? I go, okay, think of Bruce Springsteen with a badge. There it is. There's your concept right there. My biggest regret is that I didn't do Cobra's franchise, Tango and Cash, and Demolition Man. I felt each one of those had at least 3 movies in them, but I was just, I guess maybe too lazy, but I didn't do it. But I felt those films had potential to go on. Tulsa King.
Howdy.
Howdy.
Can I help you?
Yeah, I just got into town. I'm just looking around and I'm wondering, how does all this work?
Taylor Sheridan gave me a call around 10 o'clock at night. He goes, I got this concept about a gangster fish out of water being banned to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I went, I'm in. Because I've always wanted to play a gangster, but play it a little differently because it had been done so brilliantly before. It was Tony Soprano and Casino and all that. When we were allowed to all work together with Terrence Winter, myself, and Taylor, we kind of came up with this. One thing that was necessary was heart and some humor, because that hadn't been done really, not really, in a long-running character. So that was the intrigue. I wanted to see, also, I wanted to basically play myself. The concept of waking up one morning, you're not an actor, you're a gangster, but you have the same personality. So what you see up there is pretty much me.
I sent my own message. What? Hey. Silence is golden.
Well, I think the direction of Dwight is what you can identify with him, because being shipped to a place that you've never been to in your life at 75 years old, you have no friends, loneliness is abounding everywhere, and you're basically sent there to die. That was becoming a very grim story until the character, the driver, shows up, Tyson. And then all of a sudden you now have some comedic relief. And for the first time, the audience goes, oh, this is not as dark as we thought. This is going to be maybe kind of an unusual ride between humor and drama. TV is much harder, much faster. It's unrelenting. And also, it just battles your brain all. It's like being punched with a jab every 10 seconds, because nothing's ever done in continuity. You're jumping here, jumping there, and all right, we're ready. I just got back to, we're ready, come on back out. So it's unrelenting, whereas in a film, we used to have 90-day shoots. Here you have to do 2 hours in 11 days, 12 days. So if you really break it down, one season on Tulsa King is the equivalent to 5 Rocky movies in time, because you have each movie, Rocky's a 2-hour movie, right? Those 2 hours are just 2 episodes. You still have 8 more to go to finish the series. So it's a lot of work.